Hello and welcome into another episode of Lessons in Product Management. I'm your host, John Fontenot, and on today's episode, we get to hear from Gopal Erinjippurath, who is the CTO and Head of Product at Sust Global. And with his background in data and analytics, AI and machine learning, we're going to talk about that topic, AI and machine learning. Where is it going, and why does it matter to your career as a product manager? This is Lessons in Product Management. Let's get started. Hey, Gopal, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, John. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. So for the audience, could you just give a quick background of yourself, quick introduction of kind of what you've done and kind of where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am Gopal Erinjippurath. I head up the tech and product functions at Sust Global as one of the founders. And my entire career has been largely in the space of data. I started my career in multimedia, working on data-rich environments in digital video and video analytics and high dynamic range video content. And around 5-6 years ago, made the transition into looking at machine learning and computer vision oriented approaches applied to large scale spatiotemporal imagery on Earth observation. So I've been doing that ever since. And over the prior to founding Sust, I was the head of insights and analytics at Planet Labs, where we launched two very exciting capabilities around large-scale Earth observation. One of them is Planet Analytics, and the other one is Planet Variables. And very thankful for the opportunity to work there with a range of different scientists and engineers who with deep expertise in remote sensing. And I would say, in one line, my career has been largely research collaboration and research commercialization, bringing ideas from the research lab and into products for mass adoption, and building software products that turn into billion-dollar businesses.
Sounds like a super exciting experiences. Really excited to jump in and kind of dive deeper more into kind of what you see in the machine learning and data science space. So as we look at it, right, I hear different types of conversations around like AI, machine learning, data science, like where are we? What is it useful for? Is it, pie in the sky type of stuff right now, or is it actually useful for some things? And so I'm curious from your standpoint, like where have you seen machine learning win when it comes to software products? Maybe where do you think we're still early? And I guess in terms of the life cycle of machine learning as a technology for products to leverage, where do you think we are in that life cycle?
Yeah, John, that's a bunch of very interesting questions. There's a lot of unpack there. So maybe we can start with, is it a success? And in the grand scheme of things, I feel like data-driven decision making has become central in the enterprise software space. No ambiguity there. And is machine learning hugely successful at changing human behavior? And I think the answer there is yes. Today we interact with devices a certain way. We interact with our daily informational sources in a certain way, be it your Alexa, or be it how you read the news, or be it how you search your email. The word search is fundamentally served through machine learning capabilities. So I'm seeing that already the mainstay. There are obviously many areas where things can be better, and where there are capabilities that will improve over time. But we're seeing some great advances over the last 10 years, and that's going to continue to happen. When it comes to the conversation around machine learning in products and analytics as a whole, I feel like there are at least two different dimensions to it. So data and analytics can be useful in making better decisions, which is largely the space of business intelligence, or it can be used for building new products which don't exist today. which is data transformations. In the second dimension, you're actually thinking and working through the process of going from unstructured or semi-structured data into structured data sets, which are easy to query. So, and there is also a synergy between these two dimensions, which is, when you build data-driven products, you're more in line and attuned with making data-driven decisions. So that's kind of broadly how I would characterize the space as it exists today.
Okay. No, that's helpful context. So I guess from the successful areas that you've seen, I know you said you've been in video with like high dynamic range. You've been in like data analytics. Are those like is video streaming and data analytics some of like the better use cases you've seen, or like do you have examples of companies that have really done a good job of changing user behavior using machine learning?
Yeah, I would say in both in the area of entertainment and environment and intelligence. So those are two areas where I've spent a lot of time. In both of those cases, in both of those domains, I would say the use cases that have human intractability and high tolerance to error are where you can have a lot of human replacement with machine learning driven capabilities. So in the case of entertainment, I think there is a high tolerance for error because if you get a recommendation which you don't really like, it's not like you stop using Netflix, you still continue to use it. So the error tolerance is high. And fundamentally, it's not human tractable. There is no group of humans that know all the titles in the world and how they're related to each other. So, say in that case, recommendations powered by data for the entertainment ecosystem is very valuable. And it's a very similar parallel when it comes to environment and intelligence. That's just today we're just surrounded by so many sensors and so much data that exists out there that there is no human way to pass through that data. You do need machine-driven capabilities. And if you have sufficient redundancy in the data sets, you get to a point where there is error tolerance. So I would say that's the way I would look at the capabilities that have gone live and have been huge success stories. So case in point, right, when with the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, there were analysts who were looking at Earth observation imagery, where it was a combination of machine and human intelligence that enabled the early identification of war-prone activity before the announcement of war. So that's a predictive capability that came to life there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd be super curious to see what that data was telling people before the conflict broke out, but that's a completely separate note. So keeping it more on topic, what for the PMs listening to the conversation, and I'm really curious about this too, right? Like it seems like companies are being put in a position to where to stay competitive, you need to be able to leverage data to be able to, whether it's personalization or whether it's some other use of machine learning to make better decisions or to help your customers make better decisions. It seems like that's almost becoming, or it's getting to the point where it's table stakes. So for PMs listening who might be in a company or working on a product that's not leveraging data science or machine learning, I guess how important is it? And I guess what is the timeline, I guess, to get up to speed on this this technology, to help our career as product people?
Yeah, and I feel that's again a fairly complex topic. So I'll try and simplify at
Sure.
least my learnings in this space. So the PM function as it exists today is not very old, like like the engineering function is, and it's definitely evolved. Going from hardware-driven product management, which had a fair bit of project as well as program components to it, to SaaS product management, to now what's the new persona of data product management. And I would say across all of them, there's at least three layers that that I've come across, which is which are skills that product managers need to have. One of them is identification, which is uh, identifying strategic use cases of where solutions that your teams are working on, your engineering team and data teams are working on, can bridge into ecosystems that are emerging. So that also includes aggregating data from different sources, aligning on strategy, defining domain language, outlining hypotheses, and then connecting to stakeholders and executive input. Uh, the second dimension is probably that of personalization, which is how do you prototype and build, and maybe in the early days, don't try to over bake the pie till you know what ingredients people like in the ecosystem you're serving. So the building and identifying basic levels of capability and mastering the art of the MVP, or the minimum viable product, I believe is like super valuable. And constantly testing the product hypotheses without having everything built out with early customers is a methodology I've followed and I've seen successful teams follow in building out new products. And the reality is the best product managers I've come across in my career are actually entrepreneurs, because they've had to forge product market fit in new environments and think very creatively about how to do the most in terms of learning with the least in terms of resources. And that's often hard to find in bigger organizations. And then also in the personalization element, how do you define what the proposals are for scaling? How do you go from the MVP to the scale product as a proposal? And then the third and probably the most important layer, I believe, is building capacity, which is building out more inspiration within your teams, getting them to understand the why. And that goes across the board, right? It would go to, in an organization, communicating to key stakeholders within your engineering team, inspiring the engineering team, hiring the best, being the voice of reason and the why. And then when it comes to your customers, getting them to understand the direction and the near term, the midterm, and the long term on your product line. So those are all valuable dimensions for a PM to cover. And that's again where you could get to buy-in from executive and stakeholders on new features and updates you want to phase out. And across all these three different dimensions, I see a data PM as being very cognizant of how can data be used in in the course of identification, personalization, as well as engagement with your product, your audience, and your internal team.
Kind of a side question from that, as we start thinking through like what use cases we could leverage data for, how necessary is it to be proactive and understand like what data are we collecting today and what data do we need to be able to solve XYZ problem through data?
Right. So I feel like it comes back to hypothesis testing. So let's not even think about content or new product development. Let's just look at, understanding your existing business and business analytics. And right there, today there are more than 10 years ago, there are so many tools, be it Looker or be it Mixpanel, that are at the disposal of a product manager to better understand and test the hypothesis that they hear from sales on what product should do, from executives on what product should do, from engineers on what product should do. So in a case where you have the flywheel already running and you have users using your capability, those are the kind of capabilities you want to wire up and tune and monitor towards thinking through decision making on your products.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So for the product manager listening who's like, okay, I probably need to start getting developing my data competency and start looking into what machine learning is and like how this might impact my career. Are there any resources that you would point to that we could go look at?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, now more than ever, there are some very good introductory courses you kind of need to have some element of science aptitude. I wouldn't say science background. Analytic aptitude. I wouldn't say analytic background to get started on these directions. And I'm actually just in the midst of like pushing out a blog post that walks through those steps and like, what a PM can do to actually learn more about machine learning to get started, especially when you're managing a product which has machine learning as its core value propositions, as well as using data. So I almost call data and machine learning synonymous because there is limited ML capabilities that don't use a treasure trove of data. And the data is less useful unless you can have inferential capability built on top. So yeah, I would say there are a ton of video resources online to come up to speed on. There are a ton of blogs that I'll list out in my upcoming blog. So more to share on that, and maybe I can share that through the show notes after.
Absolutely. Be happy to link it to it. Well, Gopal, I really appreciate you coming on to share this advice. Are there any parting words of advice or thoughts that you'd share with the listeners before we go?
Yeah, I would say, since you folks in the audience largely care about, you're coming in with a product management background and are inspired on that direction, I would say the primary, couple of pieces of inspiration I've found through my career is one, really focusing on usage. I feel like that's the one metric when you build a product that matters. And you have to be gentle with that metric, which is early days, you probably won't have as much usage as a bigger and more mature bigger company with a more mature capability would have. But still being able to go in and understand the usage of your product or your MVP capability is very valuable. Secondly, don't be shy of MVPs. I feel like that's the way you build new capabilities and bring it to market. Now more than ever, especially in software and machine learning, people are tolerant of imperfect capabilities, provided it serves a very specific need and satisfies a very well-defined use case. So identifying the target. And then the third bit is think about picking your early customers or early access users very carefully, because that can define the trajectory of how your MVP gets scaled to a fully fleshed out product. So if any work you do upfront in terms of scoping your early access customers is very well worth the time spent.
It's fantastic advice. Thank you so much. And yeah, as soon as you get me the blog link, I'll be sure to put that in the show notes. So if you're listening to the episode, scroll down to the show notes and you should see them there. And again, Gopal, I appreciate you coming on and sharing with the listeners.
Thank you so much, John. Very happy to be here. And for all of you listening, thanks very much. And do stay in touch. LinkedIn is a great way to find me. Feel free to reach out there, drop me a message. And I wish you all the very best in your careers.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube channel. If you're if you're listening on the podcast, make sure that you rate and review and subscribe or follow if you haven't already. And thanks for joining me this week, and we'll see you next week for another lesson in product management.